I find that due to the state of emergency, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. There is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously. I'm confirming that we will provide public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selective legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through the platform. The public has access to watch and listen. We provided public notice of the necessary information. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting. If there are problems, email remote@ledge.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access, we will adjourn the meeting. Please note that all votes will be done by roll call. And let's start with roll call attendance. I'm Senator John Reagan in my home office by myself. Jeb?
Jeb Bradley, I am in Wolfboro and I'm alone in the House.
Gary?
Senator Gary Daniels, I'm at my State House office and my assistant is in the adjoining room.
Lou?
I'm Lou D'Alessandro. I'm in Manchester. I'm in my home and my wife is in the house.
David?
Senator David Waters, I'm at my home in Dover, alone in the room.
Okay, welcome everybody. And we're looking for the Department of Safety.
Okay, I'm going to bring in the commissioner and Steve Lavoie.
Good morning, Sonia. Did you call my name? Because it briefly went out offline.
Oh, yes, it does that when I promote you to panelist.
Okay, fellas, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Robert Quinn, Commissioner of the Department of Safety, and I'm happy to be presenting our capital budget request for you here today. For the 22-23 biennium, the Department of Safety is requesting funding for one capital project. This project will upgrade the technology and operations at our state's Emergency Operations Center, also known as the EOC, which is located inside the Incident Planning and Operations Center, which we refer to as the IPOC on Smoky Bear Boulevard. The Emergency Operations Center is activated during natural or man-made disasters and serves as the hub of New Hampshire's emergency response. When activated, the EOC utilizes the Emergency Support Function, ESF structure, to coordinate a federal interagency support for response to an incident. This system promotes an effective response utilizing all available state, federal, nonprofit, volunteer partners, and other resources. On March 13th of last year, the EOC was activated in response to the federally declared disaster for coronavirus and COVID-19. Since that time, a unified command structure was established to oversee ESFs staffed by individuals from across state agencies, including the Department of Safety, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Administrative Services, Department of Information Technology, and our New Hampshire National Guard. Levels of activation have varied throughout the response. This $750,000 capital request upgrades the technology and overall operational functionality of the EOC. This project will ensure that the EOC is ready to provide an effective, coordinated, and data-driven response to disasters in New Hampshire. I'm pleased to introduce Director Steve Lavoie, who will provide details about the three components of this request and provide a summary of extension requests for our current capital projects. Thank you, and good morning, Steve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So as the Commissioner mentioned, there's three real components of this request. The first is to upgrade the audio video controller and display in the EOC. There's the existing technology in the EOC was installed in 2007, and at this point it's obsolete. It's a series of projectors that are used to project information onto the screen. It's limiting the ability for individuals in the room to see everything on the screen. They're limited in their processing capabilities as well. The picture quality is not high definition. It's just not able to provide everyone with the quality of information that they need when responding to an emergency when the EOC is activated. So upgrading this system, the audio video controllers in the EOC room will help to ensure that access to real-time data remains consistent and constant throughout an activation. And just as a side note, there were situations during the current COVID response in which projectors failed and needed to be replaced in the middle of the emergency. And so we have active failure of the system when we're trying to respond at a statewide level. The second piece is to integrate all of the AV technology throughout the conference rooms and the different areas within the IPOC that HSEM uses to respond to emergencies. So in addition to the EOC room itself, there's the situation room, there's a media room, there's the governor's EOC office. All of these areas need to have the same access to the information across the board so that when there's meetings, conference calls, phone calls, just discussions, everyone's getting the same information at the same time. And so that coordination of resources is really critical. We don't have that capabilities currently. And so that's the second piece of this project, which would be making that change. Finally, the third component is upgrading the furniture within the SEOC. So the photos that were presented here, it shows that each area, each emergency support function within the EOC, once it's activated, has a separate workstation in the area. These workstations are fixed. They served a purpose and are useful in our response. But when we faced a new threat with infectious disease outbreaks and trying to limit infectious disease within this emergency response to keep our staff available, we realized that we had some challenges with the existing furniture setup. So the idea here would be that we purchase and replace the existing furniture with more modular system. Not only will that help us with if there are future pandemic or infectious disease concerns, it'll also enable the different EFCs to work together when they're working on smaller task-based projects. They can move their desks together and work in a group as opposed to being stuck within their fixed locations. So this upgrade to the EOC is really critical to maintaining our approach, our effective and coordinated data-driven response to all the disasters that the EOC and Homeland Security responds to. And they'll ensure that the Division of Homeland Security and all of the resources across the state that are engaged during an activation, that they all have the tools needed to respond appropriately.
Questions from the committee? David?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not so much a question, just to say thanks for the great job over the COVID crisis. I've been up to the center and, things are always humming up there, but it really was amazing how all the agency staff stepped up. So just wanted to add that, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
thank you. I know you're only asking for funding for, this technology upgrade. Were there any other projects that the Department of Safety had that were not included in the governor's budget? And could you give us the background on those? You don't need to do it right now, but just maybe submit it.
No, thank you for the question, Senator. No, this was the only capital project that the agency submitted during this biennium. The main reason being we have, which we'll go into a brief description of next, we have 8 existing capital projects from prior periods, which are still in play.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Could I add one last quick question? Steve, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, the cost of the furniture as part of this deal, what would that be?
We're estimating about $200,000 for the furniture components.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nicely done, gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sonia, are we ready with police standards? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Let me just. I will bring them in just a moment. Okay, they are on their way in.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is John Skippa, and I am the Director of New Hampshire Police Standards and Training. And I'm here this morning to present two capital improvement project requests. The first one is titled AC replacements, and the second one is titled Range Ventilation Filtration Upgrade and Replacement Project. In this request, we are asking for authorization to spend up to $475,000 to be paid for by the general fund to replace 8 air conditioning units that were installed in 1983. And we are asking for $850,000 from the general fund for range ventilation, filtration, upgrade, and replacement. Speak to the first project on the AC replacements request. This is to replace 8 air conditioning units that were installed in 1983. And those units take care of several training areas to include the Virtua simulator lab, the computer lab, training classrooms, and a number of offices on that end of the building. The replacement of these units with modern, efficient units will greatly reduce energy consumption, reduce system maintenance costs, and moves the agency towards the goals of reduction of fossil fuel and cost reduction set forth in Executive Order 2016-03. This project will decrease the state's utility consumption. The second project is titled Firearms Range Ventilation Filtration Upgrade and Replacement. The Firearms Range project is for the indoor range, which was initially installed in 1992. Our firearms range is used to train all full-time, part-time, and State Corrections Academy recruits, along with taking care of several in-service firearms courses to include instructor classes and recertification classes. After 28 years of continuous usage, the range filtration, ventilation, encapsulation system is showing signs of fatigue. Specifically, filter frames are warping and sagging. The ventilation system must work at peak effectiveness, as this is a life safety device that removes dangerous and toxic particles from the air during firearms training with live ammunition. The range ductwork located at the back of the range, which culminates on the tactical center roof, is weather damaged and is causing leaking to occur and damage to the ductwork insulation. It is unknown what the extent of the suspected deterioration of the fan motors are. Further, the backstop presently, as designed, fragments the rounds and captures the lead and/or frangible ammunition fragments, which need to be remediated. It is thought to replace that backstop with an encapsulating backstop to capture those particles, as opposed to allowing them to become airborne. With the upgrade to a more efficient ventilation and filtration system and possible revamp of the variable frequency drive controls, it will ensure that this life safety device is running at peak efficiency and help with the agency goal of reduction of fossil fuels and cost reductions as set forth in the previously mentioned executive order. And I stand ready for any questions from the committee.
So you're making all these claims about utility bill reductions. Do you have a dollar amount for that?
I do not, Senator.
Right. Questions from the committee? David?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so I just wanted to check in on the projects. Is everything all set on all the paving and everything else we've done up there the last few years? And then were there any other projects that you had requested from the governor that didn't make it into the House?
Senator, these were the only two projects that were requested for this fiscal year. And with regard to the paving, which was a very large project that occurred before I was appointed, I know that the follow-up piece to that project is the sealing of the pavement. And just yesterday, I spoke with the plant manager here, and we're trying to ascertain whether that was built into the capital, check that the operational expenses for this upcoming fiscal biennium.
And that would not be something that would be included in a capital request anyways, something like sealing?
That's the question I asked the plant manager, and he said that it would have been built into the operational
cost.
expenses.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Gary?
Thank you. I want to follow up on Senator Reagan's question, because I had the same. If you don't know the dollar amount, do you have any kind of an estimate on percentage wise what savings would be, or what how much more efficient is it going to be?
I do not have those answers, Senator, and I can find those answers out for you and forward it to the committee if that's helpful.
Follow up. So if you could do that, appreciate it, because I'm curious as to how you can make a statement that they're more energy efficient if you don't really know what the savings are going to be.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Not seeing any other questions. Mr. Skipper, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members.
And next is HHS.
So I'm not sure who will be presenting from HHS. So if you are here in the Zoom, could you please raise your hand? Okay.
That's Jameson. And that's next Friday, the 21st.
I am bringing someone in from HHS.
Jason, you can unmute and begin.
Oh, I've got another hand. We also have a hand from David Clapp, so I will bring him in as well.
Jason and David, we're waiting for you to begin.
I was waiting for the rest of our team to be coming. Dave Wieters does the tech portion. Jason and I can do the facilities portion.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Is Mary Cleese on? She's got the slide presentation.
I don't see her.
Okay, if you want to hold on a second, I'll see if I can get a hold of her. Mary Calise will be logging in as we speak.
I see her. I'll bring her in.
Morning.
Good morning.
Are we able to get Dave or no?
I just tried to reach him. I wasn't able to.
Okay.
Yes, somebody begin.
Just a second while I get the presentation ready to share. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we will go over summary and overview of our projects in the priority order. We have some other projects as well that will be in priority order. Unfortunately, as you're aware, Dave Wieters is our CIO, and he is not yet on the call. And most of our presentation starts with IT projects. However, this is our summary and overview slide that shows total funds with a breakout of federal and general, both for the governor's capital budget as well as the House. The House budget has 4 building and repair maintenance capital projects, and it has 8 IT-related system modernization and life cycle management projects. Are there any questions on this slide?
Keep going.
This is again another breakout that shows the IT projects versus the facility projects, both in federal and general dollars. And it also has at the bottom the other important requests that we have broken out by federal and general funds. So this is our most important capital project. It's for the DCYF, Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System, which is referred to as CWIS. It is the second biennium that we've requested funding for this project. And it's to replace the current bridges system. which is currently 23 years old. It is a 50-50 project. And then we get into slides that are relevant to MMIS. And I really would prefer to leave the MMIS slides to Dave Wieters if we can get him into the meeting and skip down to the facilities projects so that Dave Clapp and Jason can speak to those, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
your show.
Right there. Okay, the first facility project we has is for the Glencliff home, the Lamont wing roof replacement. The roof is in very dire shape. It's missing shingles. We've had numerous repairs done on it. It's to the point now that there is some degradation that allows sunlight and some moisture to get within the building. Nothing has gotten out to the walls yet, but the roof itself is in pretty tough shape. We do have some buckets up there catching rainwater when it does rain heavily. If we don't do this project, the chances are getting degradation within the rest of the building are high. Project's requested funding is $1.1 million. Next is going to be New Hampshire Hospital seclusion room safety upgrades, and I'll let Jason Teester speak about this.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Jason Teester. I'm the Director of Facilities at New Hampshire Hospital. In this slide, we talk about the need for upgrading our seclusion rooms on each patient care unit. These rooms need to be upgraded to meet regulatory compliance through Joint Commission. These, when patients are in seclusion, there are certain steps taken to provide safety to the patient and to staff. It requires a fully padded room. It also requires access to a bathroom via an ante room. It also requires camera monitoring and auditory monitoring equipment so that continuous surveillance can occur on the patient while in seclusion. So we need these funds, $510,000 to upgrade 5 rooms throughout the hospital, 5 seclusion rooms, including bathroom and ante-room access for those to meet Joint Commission standards. This will also get us into compliance with RSA 126U for children who are placed in seclusion. Anyone definition in that statute is anyone aged 18 to 22 who is still attending school, and that could be anyone on our adult admission units. So that's part of that as well. Let me know if you have questions.
Gary?
Yes. Well, when was this RSA passed? Or changed?
I think it was 2015.
And no money was appropriated for these changes when the RSA was passed?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware.
And since we're asking questions as we go on, I had one question on the Glencliff. How much square footage are we talking about on the roof?
You're muted, Dave.
sorry. I don't have that information at this time. I can get that and get that back to you probably by the end of the day today.
Okay, so but you do have that information, is that correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Just don't have it at my fingertips right now.
Okay, yeah, if you could get that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, the next slide is covers our renovations to the C and D units of New Hampshire Hospital. These units are in great need of updates. We have done piecemeal updates to ensure that the spaces are in regulatory compliance. So we are compliant through Joint Commission in these units, but they were built in 1989. There's plenty of room for improvement and updates as far as bathrooms and shower rooms that are in desperate need of upgrading and have been requested for the last few bienniums. These are the original bathrooms and shower rooms in the units. We need secure ceiling upgrades as well, flooring in patient areas, and then other design changes to meet square footage ratios for patient care and activity space in the units. A great deal of time has been put into kind of putting this together, and luckily we have a design, or at least a basis of design in place from our E&F renovation that's currently underway. So that could save in costs, but we're requesting $5,650,000 for this out of the general fund.
David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this question is about this project and also about the Lamont roof. So they are listed as funded on page 4 of HB 25. But these two projects are also included in that federal funding list on page 11. And most of the things on the list on page 11 are ones that were not funded in the in the basic body of the budget. So I just wondered, how this is this just a quirk of the list, and that it would be that if the federal funds, these would qualify for the federal funds, but I just didn't understand why it was in both places.
Quite honestly, I'm not sure why it was listed in both places. They were originally listed as capital projects, and it might have been that they felt that they may be able to get the funding from the federal. Other than that, I really don't know.
But I guess the potential is that if they are on that list, then these amounts could then be taken out if we have some clarity on that list. So, okay, that's my question. Thank you.
We can confirm that and get back to you.
Because you do have obviously there's the big one on that, and so that extra list, and then there's one other project you have on that as well. It's smaller, I guess, for the sewer upgrades. But all right, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, what else do you have?
The next project is the demolition of the Wilkins building located down on the SYSC campus down in Manchester. The Wilkins building suffered a catastrophic fire that was caused by arson. It's left the building in an uninhabitable and unusable condition, and we have put a fence around it to protect it, but we have caught people from around the area in the building for one reason or another. And we are very afraid of somebody getting injured and being liable for that. We do have permission from Historical Resources. They've been consulted on this, and so long as we retain some artifacts from the building, they are okay with the demolition of the building. And the requested funds are $750,000.
Gary?
Is it the intent to leave once the building is torn down, to just leave it there, not rebuild it?
As it stands right now, that is correct, that we will just be basically clearing the spot, filling it in, and grading it out.
Okay, does the demolition of the building in effect have any impact based on the federal funds that we took for the cinema center?
I do not believe so.
Lou?
Just quickly to address Senator Davis' question, it's totally separated, Gary, from that situation. It's an older building. It's been there for a long time, and it's way off in a corner of the property. And the reason why there has been some concern about it, it was on the historical register, and that was the problem with tearing it down. But it's not repairable. You wouldn't rebuild on it because it doesn't play any role in terms of the operation of the facility. Its purpose has been outmoded and gone for a long time.
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, proceed with your presentation.
If I could ask, please, that Deputy Commissioner Lori Weaver and Dave Wieters be brought over. I believe.
Sure. So I think Dave Wieters is already here, and I will bring in Lori Weaver.
Thank you. Okay, Dave Clapp, could you please continue where we were with the path center?
Sure. The Path Center, which is the Philbrook building on campus here in Concord, is now being used for the PATH program. There has been a sewer issue with that building for quite a number of years, and it's gotten to the point now that it is causing major disruption of the program and the building use. So DAS, who was managing the building previously, had submitted a request for a capital project to have the sewer work done to get rid of the long-running problem. And we're just here to support that because we are using the building now, and DAS is no longer using it.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to go back to Dave Wieters so he could do his presentation for IT.
Yeah,
or if you want to
Wieters,
finish
go
out
ahead.
the facilities.
Mr. Wieters, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is David Wieters, Information Services Director for DHHS. And the first project that you'll see, as Mary Calise brings it up, is our comprehensive child welfare information system. This system is at the direction of our federal partners, Administration for Children and Families. They created a new model, which is for short is CWIS, in June of 2016, and requested that all states migrate over to that new system from the old model, so that we would, one, do two things: follow a lifecycle management of our software, which in this case our system is 23 years old, and leverage new technologies and productivity functions to improve the services for our children and families in our state. This is part of a 6-year incremental modernization of that system. It is one of our more complex systems, and it's leveraging a platform working with Department of Information Technology, Salesforce, to do the intake, assessment, case management, reporting, and then the final version in the 6th year will be a claims processing component. Year 3 and 4 of this project is what we're looking for in this biennium, and it will be focused on the case management and reporting functionality of the solution. This is a federally matched program where we have 50% funds from our federal partners, and it's estimated right now is allocated $9,259,352, of which half of that is our general fund impact.
So how many people are we tracking for $10 million?
So definitely it changes year over year. In the pandemic, during this last year, our tracking definitely went down as to the visibility to the children. Usually reports come into our system through schools and other functions.
David, how many names are in this database now?
I can certainly get that for you.
Right.
Senator. I don't have that at this time.
Okay, if you don't know, say you don't know.
Thank you, sir. Was there any other questions on the CWIS system?
What other systems are you asking funds for?
There's several in here. So over the past several bienniums, we've deferred maintenance on our systems, and we have several of our systems that are upwards of 10 years old. This next section, it really surrounds our Medicaid management information system, which, as you may know, provides the claims processing and provider management for Medicaid in our state. It is the most complex system or sophisticated system that we have, and is made up of several different subcontracts associated with the current vendor conduit that provide the provider services, claims processing, system integration, third-party liability insurance, call center management, our federal reporting for Medicaid, as well as independent verification and validation, to name a few. There's actually a total of 14 modules that we anticipate reprocuring over the next 5 years. This specific area, we have several different projects associated with our reprocurement strategy, as well as our ongoing maintenance and support of that system. I won't go into too much more detail on this slide, but essentially the components associated with these capital projects are to avoid penalties and avoid some of our risks here. Our penalties right now that we're realizing is electronic visit verification, or EVV for short, which is associated with the 21st Century Cures Act, where the federal government requires each of the states to have this system in place to ensure that the services that are being performed physically on site are actually monitored and reported on via this system. It's really a fraud, waste, and abuse program to ensure that the claims that are being submitted are associated with actual services rendered. The cost to implement that, which you'll see in a future slide here, for general fund, is actually less than the anticipated penalties over the next biennium, so we're going to be recommending for that. Other risks are due to the go live of 2013 of our system and the purchasing of the equipment in 2007. Our software is over 14 years old, rendering us at risk of decertification by our Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services federal partners, which would have an increased impact of general fund of about $6.5 million. What that means is, having a certified system, we're able to get an additional 25% federal match. If we get decertified due to not replacing our hardware or software, that 25% general federal match would go away, and potentially, depending on how severe the audit results, they could take all of the federal match away. So if we could go to the next slide really quick, we'll go through the projects associated with MMIS. So the first one is the Lifecycle Management and Reprocurement Project. You'll see this one is for a total of $90 million, of which the general fund impact is 10% of $9 million. The federal matching of $81 million would allow us to do several different things. One is to upgrade the software on the existing system and maintain and operate that system utilizing both the capital funds as well as some of our operations funds over the next 5 years while we reprocure methodically the components associated with the CMS's guidelines. So CMS original direction was for states to own the equipment and basically manage the life cycle of the equipment on the state side. In the new guidance, they're recommending that we look at opportunities of new technology, which are, you might have heard as software as a service or platform as a service. But essentially what that means is it puts the ownership of replacing of hardware and upgrading of software on the vendors and eliminates that risk on the state side, which flattens out our budget over time and actually provides for more predictable budgeting. So the goal of that component would be to bring us up to current software levels and maintain our security and privacy of our constituent data more effectively, which is currently more vulnerable as a result of not having supported software, as well as starting the reprocurement effort of provider services, the call center solution, improved care coordination, and our system integrator. So this is what this capital project would fund. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So if I understand correctly, for the $9 million of general funds, there'd be an avoidance of, just in the next budget, about $13 million in penalties. Am I correct in that?
That is a correct assumption, Senator.
Okay, and secondly, as you're making this upgrade with privacy concerns, hacking concerns, will all available technology be used to prevent ransomware attacks, things like that?
It will. It is part of the life cycle management of this would be putting in place enhanced security and privacy controls. Not only is it software and hardware, but also training programs associated with the system.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there's no further questions, I can go to the next slide.
Go to the next thing.
So this next beneficiary service improvement capital project is also associated with the MMIS. And this is specifically associated with enhancing the existing system to address some of the components that are required for reprocurement. So you'll see in the top ribbon there where we have independent verification and validation contract for federal compliance. What that is that contract essentially is a CMS requirement for all future reprocurements, where that vendor would be watching over all the work that is being done, providing reports that what we said we were getting done is actually being accomplished. And it is a requirement for federal matching dollars going forward for any future reprocurement of the MMIS. The additional contracts associated with this capital project is the third-party liability claims and fraud detection system, which currently is operated by Conduent. However, through a modular reprocurement effort, we are looking to release that as a separate RFP and get a competitive vendor in place to help us go through our third-party liability claims and ensure that we're essentially reclaiming all the dollars that are available from other insurance providers, as well as any fraud that may be occurring. Some other components is really going through the digital transformation of the system, which translates to having self-service functionality for our providers, having better and more efficient and effective nursing facility cost analysis to support the rate setting, as well as better nursing facility cost reporting. So that those self-service functions are something that we needed to put in place for several years. We have, and we're trying to put it into this capital request to get this done. Any questions on the beneficiary service improvement?
Go ahead.
Okay. So this next one is the electronic visit verification system, which I referred to earlier in the overview of the MMIS components. Again, this is really meant to reduce fraud and ensure that we have an electronic check-in process that shows that the care provider is actually on site providing the service that the claim would be representing. This project is estimated a total of $5.66 million, of which our funds are $566,000 or general funds. And as you see in the penalties, starting in January 1st of 2021, we started receiving penalties for the personal care services. And those penalties are estimated in the next biennium to be 1.5 million after working with CMS. And our goal is to get this system approved, this capital project approved and implemented as soon as possible to reduce any penalties in the future. The estimate, if we were approved today, would be implementing by April of 2022, which would reduce our penalties from 1.5 million to closer to 1.2 million in the next biennium.
Can I just ask a question on this, Mr. Chair? So if this gets funded, would you have the ability to work with a federal delegation to get those penalties waived as long as we're implementing this?
We are working with them. However, we submitted this project in the previous biennium, and we went through that good faith exemption during that biennium, given that we were not funded for it, and they did waive it for the 2 years. And then now they waived it for most states during that time frame, and then January 1st, 2021 was their hard date. They have given no indication that they would work with us for any waiving of penalties going forward.
Well, I guess I'd suggest you work with the senators and the House members to try to get that waived.
Definitely will do that. Thank you, Senator.
Yep, thanks.
If we can move to the next slide. So as we move forward, the MARS-E, which is the Medicare and Medicaid Services Minimal Acceptable Risk of Security and Privacy Controls for Exchanges, it's quite the mouthful, is a requirement by our federal partners to do on a biennial basis, where we review and go through our enrollment and eligibility, our integrated eligibility system, which you may have referred to as New Heights or New Hampshire Easy. This is essentially a federal audit that requires a fair amount of resources, professional resources, to go through and look at every component of that system, document it, report it back to the federal partners. And we have historically contracted out for this due to the intensity of the requirements of the report, as well as the impacts if we are not compliant. If we aren't able to process this report in a timely manner, we would lose access to our federal data services hub and our federal facility marketplace, which would eliminate our ability to provide that eligibility and enrollment in a timely manner for the services across our state, including our SNAP and TANF, as well as our Medicaid claims, Medicaid options. So the funds requested here is a total of $600,000. Again, our federal partners are looking at matching at 90%, and our general fund impact would be $60,000. Any questions on the MARS-E security assessment? Okay, if we can go to the next slide. So as we move through, this is part of our long-term supports and services group division. and it's our developmental services information technology remediation. This is phase 2. And what we did in phase, as a result of an LBA audit finding, we went through phase 1 of researching and analyzing what technology solutions were available. And then through that process came up with a recommendation through an RFI as to how we should move forward with the procurement. The procurement of the new system will meet both all of the needs from the LBA audit, as well as the business needs to provide improved developmental services to our constituents in the state. As we move through all of our technology solutions, we partner with DYT as well as the information services team to really look at how we can braid the technologies together. And so what you'll see here is we're working on the comprehensive child welfare information in Salesforce. And instead of building a whole new system, our goal is to build onto that platform and leverage what was already created in the intake and assessment component of that project and move this project forward into phase 2. This reduces our overall costs. However, in the case of this system, we're estimating, based off of that initial research, $13,278,033 as a total cost, and our general fund 10% impact is $1.327 million and change. Again, this is a Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services federally funded project where they would look at the design, development, and implementation to be acceptable as a 90% federal fund match. Do we have any questions on
Go ahead.
this? Okay, if we can move to the next slide. So continuing in that nature, that we have a direct billing solution, and there was a finding that we were out of compliance with our direct pay and a conflict of interest of regulations for our 915C home and community-based services waivers. As a result, we have a corrective action plan, and that corrective action plan requires us to implement a system as opposed to where we're currently managing the system in an access database. We need to actually move it to a methodical system that goes through IT practices of change control, security, and privacy, and meeting all of the different requirements of that corrective action plan. This system is estimated at $1 million to implement, of which 10% would be general fund of $100,000. This would enable us to continue to leverage the existing platform of Salesforce to move into this solution and address that corrective action plan, as well as improve the services of the caseworkers in our developmental services area. If we can go to the next slide. So as we move into the federal reporting integrity and compliance, this is also associated with the MMIS, but we are targeting to leverage it for other areas within our department. And so initially, to address concerns with our CMS 64 report, which is our report for federal financial participation for all of our claims for these federal matching dollars, it is a quarterly report that is, sorry, I'm getting an echo on my side. It's a quarterly report that is required to be submitted on time and accurate. The current process requires us to export data from several different systems and then have one or two, actually two resources, I believe, in finance that spend weeks to get the report accurate and ready for deployment. That is just one of many reports that are required to be submitted to our federal partners. And the goal is to take this capital project, build out our existing data warehouse that we have, and expand it to support timely reporting, as well as data analysis environments, trend-based analysis environments, and then eventually move it into more of a dashboarding business intelligence environment. What you may have seen over the course of the last year, several different dashboards regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, where people were going to find out how many tests were available or how many people were testing positive. Those type of dashboards are what we're looking to do across all of our department to provide more information and knowledge about the services that we're providing and the gaps in which we need to address those services. This project would be integrating data from behavioral health, New Hampshire Hospital, public health, DCYF, our integrated eligibility, child support services, long-term support services, and could move into other areas as needed. The funding requested for this is $6,750,000, of which we have a 33% match due to the braiding of funds across different divisions of Health and Human Services. It's not a 90% match, but we do anticipate a 33% match here, where we would be having general funds of $2.227 million and $500. In the federal funds would be the remaining 67%. The last thing I would say about this project is this is building on an enterprise infrastructure with DOIT to be able to leverage this type of reporting environment for other state agencies as well as DHHS. So that partnership in working with Department of Information Technology is integral for us to build our foundation for our reporting, but it's also integral for them to be able to leverage that foundation to move forward to building this type of reporting environment for other state agencies as well.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Would this type of reporting here been something that would have been used during COVID?
Thank you, Senator. It certainly was. So this is an ongoing project that to date we've been funding with Center for Disease Control and Prevention funds, but those are usually one-time funds where they're able to implement solutions like the COVID-19 pandemic dashboards. We've also received CDCP funds for the opioid crisis dashboards. And then we did about 3 years ago, we leveraged Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services funds to begin this system. What this capital project does is it takes what's already been put in place from those 3 previous projects and builds builds onto that, but actually builds that infrastructure so we have a sustainable solution going forward.
So what kind of initiatives or efforts are being made to make any kind of reporting useful? Now, let me give you an example. In Hillsborough County, both Nashua, Manchester, and as well as the towns, we're all putting a positivity rate less than 5%, which would have opened up long-term care facilities. Yet CDC was promoting it, or Medicare, maybe the system was promoting it at 12.3%. And it's really confusing when the state is saying one thing, but the feds are saying something else. So, I mean, it's useless data unless we can be on the same page.
And that's definitely, you're definitely accurate in your statement that it is useless unless we can be on the same page. And that is part of the effort of combining data sources together and understanding how they relate to each other. When our several of our hospitals, they report data to us, but some of the hospitals report data directly through to TeleTracker, which is a federal government solution, and then that moved to a different solution called HHS Protect. We are working with universities and other hospitals to try to see if we can get that data into our system so we would be able to report like for like. But that is a constant evolution of these type of solutions. And this is where we need the funding to ensure that we have those data sources integrated, matched up properly, and then reported on so that it can be useful. I would suggest that, however, in the cases of your example, it was not as useful for those towns. We were able to leverage some of the high level aggregate data to really make informed decisions on how we could move forward with our COVID testing, how we could open up open up services, and as well as provide vaccines throughout the state. And then we've been leveraging it, the opioid crisis, to assist with where we need improved care, and what are our gaps in that care, those care coordinations. Those are just to name a few. We do use this system both internally and externally. Externally focused data, as you know, due to privacy laws, makes it difficult to expose all of the very detailed information that could be helpful for the general citizen to make informed decisions. However, internally, we are able to match up that data more effectively and try to improve our care coordination by having systems like this.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
And that would be the last one of the capital budget items. We do have some other items towards the end of the slide that did not make it to the current bill that we were leading into at the end of David Clapp's conversation.
Okay. So these are the other items that you're wanting to add on.
Correct. I also have some follow-up information you would ask for about the square footage of the Lamont roof. Square footage of the Lamont roof is 57,225 square feet. They estimate that they're going to have to replace about 500 square feet of sheathing that's been damaged through the failure of the roof, and also replacing all the flashing and eaves on the building.
Thank you.
Okay. The SYSC bond roof replacement. The bond roof is well past its useful life. There's been tops protecting it as best as it can, and there's been a lot of leakage into the building, causing internal damage to the structure, and we want to keep that from getting any worse. So the building is being used for storage of materials that are in use throughout the facility, and we're requesting $325,000 on that. I don't have the square footage of that roof at this time, but I can get back to you if you'd like.
Yes, we would like.
Okay. The SYSC boiler, bond boiler replacement. The boiler has failed. We've had to do a temporary hookup to keep heat into that area and the buildings that it supplies heat to. There was a malfunction and the boiler basically melted down. So we're asking for $100,000 to get that replaced. Glencliff Home wastewater treatment improvements. We want to replace the collection and disposal portion of the Glencliff sewer system, certain portions of which were constructed more than 7 years ago. Some of the parts of that system are no longer allowed to be utilized within New Hampshire, and we are in violation of DES water disposal rules for that particular facility.
Can I ask specifically if you talk about disposal portion of the sewer system, certain portions which were constructed more than 70 years ago, are the ones being replaced the ones that were 70 years ago? Or, I mean, are you just making a statement that there are some that are 70 years ago, but they're still working, but there are others that need to be replaced?
No, the portion that we're talking about replacing does exceed 70 years.
Okay, thank you.
The chair.
Go ahead, Jeb.
So priority 9 and 10, I mean, how does that comport with HB2 and the House's desire, and I think a lot of advocates' desire to close the Sununu Center?
I can chime in if that helps, Dave.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Lori Weaver, Deputy Commissioner. I think it's a really good question. These have been items that have, some of them have been deferred for many years. So we keep putting them on, knowing that as long as we have residents on property, it potentially can become a safety and risk issue, such as the building that needs to be demolished. So I think it is worth consideration of if things change at Sununu, would we need to be doing those? I think the hard part really is the timing on that. So we've been waiting and waiting to replace these, and if we wait longer, and how long is anything to change at Sununu, I think is the $1 million timing question.
Or $425,000 timing question. Okay. I think if I could, Mr. Chairman, obviously, you and Senator Daniels and Senator D'Alessandro are going to have to deal with the HB2 provision, but if that provision is going to go forward, with whatever the time frame is, I think, Commissioner Weaver, you probably need to, work with us and through the capital budget process, whether this $425,000 should be, prioritized, if you can do without it, if the Sununu Center is going to be closed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Will do.
Yep. Well, just a question, Lori. These two elements, they're not used now. Now, when we talk about the Sununu Center, people got to understand that the center is one thing. These are all adjunct properties.
Correct.
As a result of that, they're almost free. They're sort of freestanding, and what's going to happen to them?
To some extent, they indirectly impact the facility and the property. So there's a workaround on the boiler, but the boiler heats certain buildings that do interface with the bigger picture. So there is like a tentacle to some of it. I mean, the barn roof replacement, if we don't do that, it's going to be another Wilkins where we may have to end up demoing the building.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the hard part, is that if we could just shut it down and just say we're not going to use it, but I think that the items that are here are things that do have some indirect impact on the our operations.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean, good. Both good points. But having been around that place for a long time, I was a trustee there in the 70s when the agricultural aspect of it was used to some extent, but as time has gone on, that's all been displaced. And do we still let people use the rear area for farming?
I know that there is a portion of the property that we do let the city use, and I think it's schools and community centers that are doing some gardening and farming on the property.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. Just a comment.
Senator Reagan, this is Chris.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure the committee understands that priority number 10, the boiler replacement, was included in the House passed House Bill 25. It's found as one of the projects that was using the repurposed lapse money on page 11 of the amendment. So I just wanted you to know that that's in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That's important.
All right, HHS, does this conclude your presentation?
There's some additional projects that are with New Hampshire Hospital that Jason can inform you about.
Right. These next two, the security system upgrades would help us purchase and implement security emergency alerting system. It's basically a small fob that each nurse and mental health worker could wear while they're on the patient care units, and should they get into patient care emergency, they would be able to alert other staff for an expedited response. Additionally, we're looking to use these funds to add additional cameras in the building and to integrate the existing camera system into kind of one enterprise system. And then the next one is additional flooring upgrades throughout the building. Again, these are long, worn out flooring that we've continued to try to upkeep and maintain since the building's original construction in 1989. Long needed improvements to the patient care area to meet behavioral health and healthcare guidelines for design and construction.
Okay, anything else?
There's a couple more IT projects as well. So actually 4 more. So starting with the Bureau of Elderly Adult Services, system modernization. That system has been in place for a little over 23 years. It needs to be updated and maintained in a more current platform. That system is responsible for managing social worker caseloads for the adult protection program. It also does service authorization and provider payments. This system would be leveraging that Salesforce platform we discussed earlier, and it would be moving forward to offer the developmental services and the comprehensive child welfare information. In building off of that work, the goal would be to provide remote system access, which essentially what they're needing in the field is a system that they can work with their clientele without having to be connected to an internet connection due to bandwidth issues in the state or availability in the state, but also enhanced functionality for those different user types and locations within the state. Without this upgrade, they're going to have difficulties continuing to support the additional and support the services that they're providing. And due to the caseloads, they would need to increase their personnel. The system itself would allow them to not have to increase their personnel. So our goal was to request the $6,795,427, of which 40% would be a federal match. Our general fund impact would be $4,077,256. The other project on this slide is interoperability and integration. The 2 key components, however, there's several other, is to improve the care coordination for our programs and services by implementing or actually continuing the statewide closed loop referral system that was implemented as part of the CARES Act funds in December 2020, as well as implement an acute care time tracking and scheduling system to replace existing systems that are working in the New Hampshire hospital, as well as work with the rest of the department for time tracking and scheduling our staff and caseworkers across the department. Other components of this interoperability would be developing and publishing a standard interoperability process, leveraging the new Smart on Fire application interface process, so that we would have a streamlined way in which to integrate with hospitals as well as providers across the state in a secure way, as well as maintaining privacy and data governance. The funding request for that was $8,128,000, of which 33% would be general fund of $2,682,240.
Okay, what else?
And then the last slide are 2 public health systems that they're both, one of them, the first one is basically run on several Access databases and several Excel spreadsheets. It's to replace the current system that's made up of several different documents to have a comprehensive environmental health data system. This would be really gold at managing the lead poisoning prevention program, as well as the Healthy Homes program. It's anticipated to be 100% general fund at $250,000. And then the last one is the liquid chromatograph and mass spectrometry system for PFAS water testing and minor renovation of the public health lab space. And this is to provide the instrument so that they can do their own environmental samples and do their PFAS testing, which we're currently sending out for testing. And we work hand in hand with environmental services to do those testing, the testing for PFAS. And the goal here would be able to improve the speed at which we were testing PFAS in the water samples, as well as be able to eliminate that external contractor that we're sending testing out to. The funding requested here is $430,000 of general funds.
And what are we spending now for these tests?
I need to get that information. I knew you would ask that, Senator. So I apologize. I knew you would ask it. I was stating the information, but I don't have that information. So I will get that information for you.
So you're going to make 5 copies of this presentation and deliver them to the State House today, along with this other promised information. And then we'll be able to, because we're at the end of our process, so we need this information today.
I will follow up on that today.
Any questions, Senator Dave?
One, if I could, Mr. Chairman, this is for Jason. Jason, the money that we appropriated in the last budget, I think it was $4 million, to renovate the children's area and create more beds. Can any of that money be used for some of these projects, or has it been totally expended? And also the money for the transitional housing, there's got to be some money left there. Because you created 16 beds at the Philbrook Center and you couldn't get anybody to accept an RFP, so they had to be in terms of dollars remaining from those 2 projects. Can they be used?
Thank you, Senator. As far as the dollars for the E&F unit renovation, those funds are tied up. We've allocated the bulk of those funds for that project to complete renovation of units E and F. As far as the extra beds, those are transitional housing beds, discharged patients from New Hampshire Hospital. But yeah, I'm not sure of the exact dollar figure. I don't know, David, if you have that, but I think we've come pretty close to expending those funds allocated to upfitting the PATH program in the Philbrook building.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
2 questions. So going back, I think it was priority number 23, the closed loop system. I keep hearing privacy concerns that have not been adequately addressed. Do you want to comment on that?
Certainly. We have been working with HHS oversight, and specifically Representative Edwards went offline with some of the questions. There were concerns of privacy, whether or not the Unite USA Inc. application that we contracted with was HIPAA compliant. It is HIPAA compliant. That we do have a business associate agreement with them. We have validated that all of their security concerns are compliant with federal laws, as well as our state laws regarding all of the information. Specifically, some of the other concerns that have been expressed on the closed loop referral is whether or not the client or patient was informed of their consent of release of information to the referring parties and or the recipients or the referrers. In the case of this system, it's actually very specific and the data governance is very strong. So for example, if I was meeting with a patient named Jane Smith, and I worked with her to identify that she needed housing supports, food services, and maybe some mental health services or SUD services, the process would be to fill out a consent or release of information form with the 3 vendors or providers that we would be submitting the referral to. She would then have the option of signing that consent of release of information either by phone, fax, or through the Unite Us product. At that time of signing consent, then the referral can be made. And what we're doing is we're adding a more quick and automated process. So you take that consent, you attach it to a digital system that has a network of providers. You select the providers that you're referring to, and then those providers would get that referral upon a second consent signed by that patient, allowing for the release of that information across the Unite Us network to those specific providers. So that the concerns were that once you're a client, that you would be shared with all providers on the network. That is not how the system works. The system only allows providers that have been referred to or referred to or referring, they're doing the referral or they're recipients, and coupled with a consent form signed by the patient for each individual referral. It is, Unite Us is in well over 20 states across the country, and is compliant with several different laws, including HIPAA and FERPA for education components.
Okay.
So we are addressing those comments as they come in.
All right, thanks. Just one other question going back to the MMIS. When you said that over time, the vendor is going to own the hardware, it will reduce the future cost. By vendor, I'm assuming you mean the managed care companies?
Thank you for the question, Senator Bradley. Actually, what it would be is each individual procurement. So like when it comes to the electronic visit verification, for instance, the vendor that's awarded would be responsible for the hardware and software. As we move through like provider services, it would be whoever wins that procurement. So we would have several different vendors that are responsible for the hardware and software upgrades.
Okay, thank you.
Gary?
It's staying with the MMIS. Notice that your ask in the next page after all your other individual proposals is some $55 million more than your original one in the proposed capital improvement program, which was 35 million. You're asking for 90 million now, which actually kind of blows the total capital improvement budget. You know, if we were to grant all of your requests here, you know, we're far in excess of what without the limit without even addressing other departments. So could you talk a little bit about that 55 million and why the change?
Certainly, that's a very good question, Senator. The increased amount after discussing and meeting with the governor's office was to address a reprocurement effort and specifically go into that replacement of additional pain points, the provider services, call center, care coordination, and system integrator. Initially, the scope of that lifecycle management was to maintain and operate the existing system while we replaced some of the other components that you see in those individual capital requests. The additional funding is to try to speed that reprocurement up. And what that will do is if we're able to replace more of the system in the first 2 years, essentially front loading the replacement, we'll have less overlap of maintenance of operations of two systems. So as you go through a modular reprocurement, which is the guideline of CMS, we have to maintain and operate the entire conduit solution for however long it takes us to implement the new modules. And since all 14 modules that we're planning on doing are currently in that one contract with Conduit, if it takes us 5 years, then we need to maintain and operate the system with Conduit for 5 years. That's a duplicate cost that's part of any type of implementation timeframe, but by front loading it with additional funds in this next biennium, we're able to reduce that time frame and potentially lower our 5-year time frame to maybe 4 or 3. I think it's an aggressive timeline, but our goal is to try to reduce the costs overall to the state over the life of the system, which a life of a MMIS system is normally 10 years. So we're looking at trying to reduce that cost to the state over the life of 10 years. It's difficult to depict that in a 2-year biennium budget process.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no other questions. And are you concluded, HHS?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to break for 5 minutes and then we'll hear from the community college system. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Ouch.
Lou,
Yes,
can I have a word with you?
sure.
Are we still live, Sonia, I guess, though?
Yeah,
Yes.
here we are. We're still alive.
You are.
All right, maybe I should just give you a quick phone call then, okay, Lou?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Sonia, you holding up all right?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. You're the key component to this whole operation.
Thanks. I have several people to bring in from the community college system. So if you want, I can start doing that. So we'll be ready to go when everyone gets back.
Okay.
All right.
We back? Sonia, are we back?
I am bringing in the folks from the community college system
Okay.
because I've got several to bring in.
We're in good hands, Lou.
We're in good hands. Oh. Yeah.
Okay, we're all back, but only Shannon Reed is here from the community college.
I can see a few of my other colleagues on the screen.
Yep, I think everyone's in. Can you not see them, Senator Reagan?
Nope.
I can see Susan Hewitt.
Okay, I've got them now. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I only lose. All right. Okay.
Shall we start?
Yes, we're all here.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, senators, and thank you for taking time to look at our capital request. I'm Susan Heward. I'm the interim chancellor of the community college system. And with me today, I have Shannon Reed, whom I know you all know, who does our legislative affairs and marketing and a little bit of this, that, and the other thing. Scott Fields, who you may not know, who has been the CFO at White Mountains, and at the beginning of this year became the chief of operations for the system, replacing Charles Ansell. And another person I think you're familiar with, and he's showing off because he has the video that made international news where he filmed an eagle grabbing a fish at Winnipesaukee, Matt Moore, who heads our capital projects and facilities. And we also have with us President Chuck Lloyd from White Mountains Community College, should you have some questions about what we see as a very exciting project. I know you've been running ahead of schedule, so I'm going to try to keep that going for you. We sent you a few days ago our request and some preliminary material. And so I'll just kind of run through some of these things. You already know we have 7 community colleges, 5 additional sites. We are, for any citizen, a resident of New Hampshire within a 25-minute drive. So we are covering the state. What may be of interest to you, next slide, Shannon, is 26,000 students, but out of those students, 93% of our students stay in state when they graduate. So the work that you've done and supported has really benefited us. Next slide. Our students were the least affected group during the pandemic in terms of unemployment. Community college graduates within the state of New Hampshire had the lowest unemployment. And the statistic that we've been talking about, and you might really be interested in because we're going to talk White Mountains for a bit, is that we actually rank nationally in terms of the number of students who exceed their parents' income level by at least 2 quintiles. So we are about doing what so many of us who are parents want to see. We want to see our children do better than we. Next slide, please. So here are our 4 buckets: critical maintenance, IT infrastructure, industry pathway programs, cost effectiveness. Next slide. We have really and truly enjoyed the benefits of your generosity. Here on the screen is actually the HVAC building that you built at MCC. I think most of you know I'm the retired president of MCC, and I have to tell you that that building is unbelievable, has increased enrollment in the technical areas, particularly in HVAC and electrical. Both of those programs had waiting lists. And in the pandemic, all of the pictures that we're showing you are actually the areas within our colleges that continue to serve students on campus. And they're critical areas beyond HVAC and electrical. We also have automotive technology here, the various allied health areas, and nursing labs, all of which are critical to our state. And we really appreciate your continued support. So next slide. So in the first column, we have the projects, then we've got what we had asked for in our original request, what HB 25 has proposed, and what our remaining needs are. So the bulk of our presentation is going to be about these priorities. Our first priority is critical maintenance. And I'll go on, thank you. Matt, if you could talk about these for a moment, please.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening to this. Our original request was $3.5 million, but since that time and due to the what has been presented to us, I've scaled this back so that you see what I would classify as very high priority needs of the system office in Manchester. You'll see actually for Manchester, Nhti, Nashua, White Mountains, Great Bay, all the colleges, it's boilers that are real old. They constant maintenance issues. In Nashua, you see, and Manchester, you'll see electrical where switchboards are outdated. This is their switch gear that are feeding electrical into the building. So we've taken out any projects that might be COVID funded so that this helps state with its critical needs. So with that, I hope that I'll take any questions on that.
Okay, am I looking at $1.4 million? Is that how much money you need?
That is correct.
Senator Reagan, the House passed HB 25 includes $1 million for critical maintenance. I'll go back up to this slide right here.
Okay.
The total need was 1.46 million. So what we are asking for from you, if you have funds to allocate, is to add this amount, which would cover this entire list of priority critical maintenance items. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, going on, we're going to go to IT infrastructure. The House passed no money in this area. We've gone back through and prioritized, and we're asking for 1.3 million. And Scott Fields, if you would talk about these 5 items, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chancellor Hewitt. Good morning, everybody. The 5 items that you see here are critical components of our IT infrastructure. If you look at load balancers, the way I can equate this is if you approach a 4-way stop sign, it allows traffic to come through our web and exit our web in a balanced way, so we're not bogging down any one particular point of our infrastructure. These are at their end of their useful life in terms of IT depreciation. And really what we'd like to do is upgrade that to the latest version of the technology that will support our processes a little bit better. Our blade upgrades are essentially stripped down servers that house all of our infrastructure and software within the community college system. Again, these items are also at or beyond their useful life, and we need to replenish those blades and servers to ensure that we have a critical process going forward. Our cloud data center, essentially what we're looking for with this is more and more technology is shifting towards online in the cloud based processes, as opposed to everybody having, servers and infrastructure for disaster recovery. You put it in the cloud. So right now we have one location that is a backup within Concord. We also have another backup position that is housed over in Durham. What the cloud allows us to do is it kind of breaks off the local utility grid and net. So if something were to go wrong in kind of that southeast New Hampshire area, all of our data is still backed up electronically at another place within the country. So it is in a redundant system and doesn't rely on the local utilities. So we'd like to go forward with that project as well for redundancy. The UPSs, these are essentially backup batteries should power be lost at any of our colleges. Being able to invest in these particular assets would allow the college infrastructure to continue to maintain over a 24-hour period, 8 to 24-hour period, until things can get in and get fixed. So we're not losing critical data or access to any of our systems at the local sites. This is something that affects each of the local colleges and academic centers that we have throughout the state. So all 12 locations. And finally, the VPN upgrade is, again, these are smaller appliances you see at $50,000 that allow for us to remote access in, and this is technology that is beyond its useful life that we need to replace.
And I would add that during the pandemic, all of this equipment has been fully utilized, and any assistance that you can offer us so that we can update systems, it really enhances our flexibility and our ability to serve students, whether they are sitting right in front of us or they are miles away, and just keep things going. I'll say that our faculty have really stepped up and are pretty versatile, and so this equipment supports their efforts. Any questions for Scott? Because I am not even going to attempt to answer questions about our IT.
So if Mr. Chairman, if I might, if there is money available, this is your top priority?
Yes, that is correct, sir. We went back as a response to what the House offered us, yes.
More than the 460 that you just cited?
Oh, I see what you're asking me. Gosh, I'm going to turn to Scott for that. I am not sure. Scott?
Senator Bradley, that is, I'm sorry, Chancellor Hewitt. Senator Bradley, that is correct. The 460,000 is on the infrastructure critical maintenance side of things. The IT bucket is a separate line item unto itself. The priorities that we have listed there come in around $1.3 million if all 5 were funded at the same time.
Okay.
I think the senator was also asking in relation to our critical maintenance request. And I would just like to clarify that our top priority is completing our critical maintenance list.
So the 460 is your top priority, followed by the 1.3.
That's right.
Talking about 1.7.
So far.
Right.
Wait a minute, so far.
I promise it won't. I promise it won't rise to the $55 million level that you heard about a moment ago.
Not even close. Our third priority has 2 components. One is to fund the second half of the Nashua Community College Engineering Technology building. That was earmarked for completion in the 22-23 capital budget. Engineering, as you know, has really increased as an area, particularly engineering technology as opposed to the 4-year engineering degree. And Nashua enjoys a very strong relationship with BAE Systems. So the renewal here allows us to keep our ABET accreditation and also to serve the needs of the Nashua area industry. And the second part that is not funded was a science lab project for Manchester Community College to support the Army project, to give biology majors and also robotics majors at MCC the opportunity to work with some of the, I would say, fundamental level equipment that's needed so that they can move on to UNH Manchester and work within those fabulous labs at the university system and support the technician level of the Army project.
So again, to recap, House Bill 25, as it came over from the House, does include the first component of what Susan just described. That's the 2.55 million to complete the Nashville project. And that had actually been earmarked in the last capital budget for funding in this upcoming biennium. But what House Bill 25 does not include currently is the second component, which is the 800,000 for the Manchester Community College Science Labs. And that would be our third priority, should you be able to find additional funding.
Could I go back to the IT infrastructure for a moment? I have a question on that. Could you define end of life as it pertains to technology? Because I mean, having worked in it for about 20 years, I know that some people may say that Word had reached its end of life, and so you needed to get the latest and greatest version, yet you may only need Word 2003. Because that's all you're doing is word processing. So in that context, can you define what end of life is? Because I keep hearing the thing often, both at the state and the town level, but there must be reason why you're saying end of life.
Senator Daniels, I can chime in and with the full admission that I am not an IT technician, but in terms of the end of life and how it relates to our equipment here at CCSNH, this has allowed us to, the equipment that we have right now, we're running upon those versions that are not being fully supported by the vendors that we're using right now. So therefore, as we move forward, support will start dropping off. And beyond the technology of the latest and greatest, as you put it, it's more on the back end side of things in terms of connectivity amongst all of the different infrastructure that we have there, maintenance support contracts that if we were to keep some of these on would be astronomical going forward because very few people support the hardware on the back end. So that's how I would phrase it. I can certainly get further detail on end of life should you ask for it.
Thank you.
Senator Daniels, we'll send you something from our IT person. We'll have him send you a note today. I know you're on a timeline, but we'll get some detail for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks so much, Chancellor. It's good to see you. So I had a question on the $800,000 for Manchester. And is there any possibility there of any private funding, or in particular, any funding out of the recent federal act, or even an earmark from Senator Shaheen for that? I mean, it's such a great partnership with Army, and you know, Manchester becoming such a biotech hub that it would be. I would think there might be some possibilities rather than capital budget for that.
I agree with you, sir. I do think there are opportunities, and especially for community colleges in the next couple of years. We continue to look at what the possibilities are for us. So we put it there. But well, we continue to look for places to fund it, definitely.
Yeah, and in terms of timing, like I have seen the draft list of earmarks from Congressman Pappas's office, but I haven't seen the draft list or the proposals out of Senator Shaheen's office yet. But I think that I don't know, have you had any conversation with him yet?
We've been talking to Chris Scott. And I believe, and Shannon, if you can verify for me, I believe that we did put the MCC Science Labs on that list.
We did have the MCC Science Labs on a list through our House delegation. It did not get selected, but there's a new opportunity potentially on the Senate side with.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I hadn't seen it on the House side. And just to say, because we're in public session, I'm really pleased that we're able to move forward with the second part of the rest of the funding for the Nashua project, great project, top priority. It's just going to be go like gangbusters with them, and really good to see. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So our fourth priority, which is not funded, and Senator Waters, building on what you've said, we are looking for private funding and so on here. I'd like to ask President Lloyd to speak about the Littleton Academic Center. And I'll begin by saying that the work that we're proposing here does not take away from the main campus in Berlin. And in fact, there have been many conversations, and I compliment President Lloyd on the work he's done with the mayors and the leadership of both Berlin and Littleton. So Chuck, take a moment and talk about this project, please.
Thank you, Chancellor, and thank you, Senators, for taking the time today. Littleton, we've been looking for a permanent home there for a number of years. We've been there since 1999, leasing, and most recently we purchased property that we had been leasing with the hopes to do some construction. Some of you may be aware we've had past iterations in town looking for primarily a technical trade space for our diesel heavy equipment program, industrial mechanics, and to expand our very popular welding program. We feel we have a conservative approach compared to some past iterations. Senator D'Alessandro, I know you were up, I believe it was 2 summers ago, and looked at a much larger facility, the Hitchner facility, which at that time was, I will say, unwieldy, just from a logistics standpoint. So we are proposing to add on to what we have just purchased, a 10,000 square foot advanced technology lab. And Senator Waters, to your point around funding streams, the reason we are only asking for $5 million for this facility expansion and everything else is we have applied for several other funding streams, Northern Borders Regional Commission, the EDA funds, and also we are in with Congresswoman Custer's community investment as well. So we have submitted some other funding. This facility, we are hoping to add to our portfolio really of academic offerings, primarily to respond to business and industry in the area. So we've got an industrial park, as many of you know, in Littleton that is very trade-based technical programs, but also it's really the access to I-93 and I-91 for that diesel heavy equipment program. We're currently leasing a facility in Berlin that is not holding up to accredited standards. So we would have to build a facility anyways or lease something else. So this also gets us out of leases, which is a smart financial decision for us in that we're going to be having this program long term. That diesel heavy equipment program is the only accredited program in New England. So getting at that access to 93, 91, 302 is critical. And again, this is a response to not only the off-road manufacturers in Caterpillar, Anderson Equipment, et cetera, but also on-road from the New Hampshire Automobile Dealers Association, Kenworth, McDevitt Trucks, and others. So I'd be happy to take some questions. And I know Senator D'Alessandro, I know you've been involved with this in the past, and I welcome any questions around it.
Well, this is a deviation from the original idea. So the question is it doable?
Yeah, I mean, that is, thanks for the question, Senator. That's exactly what we've been working, and my partner, Matt Moore, who's on with us as well, is this is probably the 4th or 5th iteration of where we wanted to land. And the reason we've landed here is because it is a conservative approach. It is something that we can control in that the previous attempts have been much larger facilities, partnerships with folks that we would have to lease from, and we couldn't as much control the facility. In that if we construct this, we have the equipment to go into it. We have, our faculty are well versed in everything that happens here, but also it's on property that we own.
Right.
We have tenants on that property that also coexist with us in employment security and Head Start as well. So it's a much better financial model, but also a better opportunity for us to be able to respond to business and industry. So we're really confident this is the iteration.
Great. And the county's receiving a significant amount of money under the president's plan, and that's not a bad situation there in terms of how to spend it, because you could take in more than one county could contribute to this. You could look at Coos, you could look at Grafton, you could look at maybe 3 counties. Just a thought.
Right.
And
Okay. David, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think this proposal is really strong in terms of the potential connection with the CTE Center and the high schools up there. You know, things are happening in Littleton, and there's just going to be such a center of employment, but we have really been talking a lot, looking to the next phase of Perkins funding for the CTE centers, of creating flexibility in regional hubs and so forth. And so I think this would really be a good way forward in terms of how the community colleges are going to relate to the CTE centers and the workforce development. I did have one particular question about the diesel heavy equipment program. I mean, that's so important, as you mentioned, for the trucking industry, and you know, because it's the credentialing place. But would you? I mean, I don't know how far along you are in design on this, but in terms of that program, you know, Mac and Peterbilt and the Canadian firm Lion are all going to electric in their heaviest, replacing their heaviest diesel with electric vehicles, and they're starting to roll them out now. So I'm just guessing about how this program would potentially be able to transform itself, or to, you know, we're going to have diesel trucks around for quite a while because they last 25 or 30 years or more. But now what's going to be rolling off the assembly lines are these electric heavy duty vehicles. So I'm just, wondering if there's any thought that the facility, when it's built, might be able to accommodate that.
Senator Waters, thanks for the question. And I believe you were in attendance at New Hampshire Energy Week when I was on the panel a couple of weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
I spoke about electric vehicles. Since then, we've gotten a grant from Electrify America out of California for that exact reason. That is where vehicles are going. They're starting small, getting larger, but you're right. Canada's way ahead of us on this, frankly. They are, they've set some aggressive by 2025, having 70% of their vehicles sold to be electric. And you're right, the trucking industry is heading there. That is part of our plan. We have actually started curriculum in our automotive program. We are translating that to our diesel heavy equipment. And really, it's going to just turn into propulsion. So it's not necessarily diesel or electric. It's going to be propulsion. So
okay, let's get back to the capital budget request.
Oh, I thought I was there, Mr. Chairman.
Get carried away.
I know it's good to move on.
All right, we'll only take a couple more.
Let's move on.
Only a couple more moments, and I would note, and we would ask for your support. The House included a notation urging federal funds be allocated to this, and we would certainly appreciate your support in that way. And our very last priority number 5 for us is Farnum Hall at Nhti. We're looking to modernize it. It is not included in the House budget. What would happen there is graphic and visual arts, and on the technical side, it's about industrial design, architectural technology, manufacturing, engineering technology, and a very recent program for them, gaming technology. So those are our proposals, and we will be grateful for whatever support you can offer us. And there's an appendix on our a presentation that just gives you a sense of our continued strong relationship with New Hampshire's business and industry. President Lloyd didn't bring it up, but a lot of the work on the whole diesel technology side has really been strongly supported by CAT. And I appreciate they've gone so far as to offer advice from the company that actually builds all of their locations throughout the country. So we certainly have industry support. The last thing I'll say about that is that I had been approached at Manchester any number of times about going into some aspects of diesel and trailer trucks. And we said, no, that's up at White Mountains. We're not going to do it. So personally, I really support the move to Littleton because I think that makes it manageable for people to commute. It essentially shaves off a good 45 minutes from the drive and right off of 93. In any case, thank you very much. If you have other questions, otherwise we'll scoot out of the way so that you can do your work.
So let's get copies of your presentation delivered to the State House.
Certainly.
It's a fairly complicated ask. So thank you for your time.
We appreciate your attention. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
senators.
Okay, so as the community college folks leave, I will bring in Gino Marconi. And if there's anyone else from the Pease Development Authority that I should bring in, please raise your hand.
Gino, you can unmute and begin your presentation.
Yes, sir. Well, I lost myself here.
We hear you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Paul Breen, the Executive Director of Pease, was going to be on the call, but he got tied up with a issue out at the airport, so you have me. Basically, what this request is for is additional funds for the turning basin upriver. It's been a long haul with this one. It was originally identified in a navigation improvement study published by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1987. There were 5 projects. This is the last one. And the importance of this project is the existing turning basin is 800 feet, and our pilots are turning 764-foot ships in it. Back in 2015 and again in 2017, the cost share for the project was appropriated by the legislature at that time because the Army Corps of Engineers had indicated that they were going to do the project then. However, their side of the fence was not funded. So back in December of 2020, we got a call from them and said that the project had been funded and it was included in their 2021 work schedule, which is going to start November. There's a environmental dredge window between November 15th and March 15th. This is a pretty extensive project. It's over 750,000 cubic yards of hard packed glacial sand that will be removed. It will be expanding the turning basin to 1,200 feet. But we'll also be elongating it downriver so that as the ships make their turn and they drift in the current, there's a safety factor included in this. So the total project cost is estimated at $25 million. The construction share by the state is $6 million. There was a post-construction contribution to future operations and maintenance of $2.5 million. And basically we came up short $1.4 million, and we asked for $1.5 million additional funds with about $100,000 in there for a contingency in case there's any extra paperwork they want us to do. If I may, I'll just give you a little bit of importance of this project besides the physical limitations of the turning basin. Back in November of 2012, we got the results of an economic impact study that was conducted by Ross Cattell, one of his PhD students, and Professor Colson from the University of Southern Maine. And at that time, in the local economy, there were 987 jobs paying over $90 million in direct wages and benefits by the employees at the 16 businesses that utilize the terminals on the river. And that does not include the activity over at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. The study also showed that 90% of the economic impacts were in the state of New Hampshire. So that's an important factor there. And regionally, they expanded it a little bit, and there were 2,357 jobs, 2,000 of them which are in the state of New Hampshire, and there was over $156 million in wages and benefits paid as additional besides what was inside the terminals themselves. And it's important also because traffic has on the river has increased. You know, we've increased over the last couple of years from 157 ships in 2017 to 213 ships in 2020. And as I said, the ships are getting bigger. 764 feet. It's a pretty big boat to be turning around in an 800-foot turning basin. We don't, you know, it's a navigation safety, but it's also an environmental safety and public safety to the folks that live in the area. And I've been working on this for 20 years, Senator. So if we don't do it now, the Army Corps of Engineers will take the federal funding and go to another harbor with it. And who knows when we'll get the opportunity again.
Good point. Questions? David.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Gino. We got to get the turning basin done, and I'm glad that you know the dredging makes sense just because get that done now too. And I don't know, Mr. Chairman, I think it's appropriate for Gino to say something about the potential request for some funding for the federal match. We've had some conversation in here about that potentially being in the capital budget for the $4 million match for the federal grant.
Oh, you mean for the
offshore wind?
Yes.
For the port, this is the port piece. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I
The
lost track
pier,
there for a second.
the dock, the pier. Yeah.
Yes, we're as you know, when the Sarah Mildred Long Bridge was built, we lost a portion of our berthing facilities here at the pier, and we've been working with New Hampshire DOT for a functional replacement. Unfortunately, back in 2014 and 2015, the estimates of the functional replacement were about $19 million. We got to 65% design, and construction costs had gone up 40%. So working with DOT and the Office of Strategic Planning and looking down the road at the development of offshore wind, we need to get this facility back up to a state of where it was prior to the construction of the bridge. Mark Sanborn in the Office of Strategic Planning has identified a grant program out of MARAD, the Maritime Administration under US DOT. And so we're all going to get together, and DOT has a consultant to do a grant application, and they're going to look for an $8 million grant. The state's match to that would be $4 million. So I know DOT and Office of Strategic Planning are looking at that and coming to the legislature to look for that grant money to put. The grants are due, the grant applications are due, I believe, July 25th.
Well, in this case, the legislature is us.
This is true, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just thought it'd be good to get that out there because there's been some conversation about it. So
and
thank you.
This conversation has all occurred in the last few days.
Right. So
correct, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and feel free to email any more updates because we're close to the decision-making time, you know.
Yes, sir. I will pass that on to my associates at DOT and strategic planning.
And Mr. Chairman, I mean, maybe we'll talk about this other time, maybe Senator Bradley and you can talk offline, but I guess my question is on the 4 million, whether we would need an amendment drafted, and if so, maybe that's something that Gino and Sanborn will have to get together for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
No other questions? Gino, thanks for your time and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Senator, and Senators, thank you for indulging as I go on about my point. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes the presentations for today. Our last meeting will be Tuesday at 9 for the university system and the Department of Transportation. With that, the meeting is adjourned.